Hi, it's Katrina. Number 10. The Animal Master. There are similar pieces of imagery that can be found throughout different cultures around the world. One of the most mysterious symbols found carved on temple walls and shaped into golden artifacts is that of the Animal Master. And while the imagery changes slightly depending on which culture we're looking at, it's always very much alike. The Animal Master is depicted as a giant man with two great beasts at his sides. Sometimes the beasts are lions, other times they appear to be huge serpents. Sometimes they're just birds. The one thing that never changes is that the individual is portrayed as a lord of animals. The Animal Master likely began as a Stone Age creation, a mysterious deity who ruled over the forests and jungles with animals following behind him. Just like how most civilizations across the world had their main deity as a sun god, from the Egyptians to the Inca, Stone Age people all seem to revere this great ruler of animals. The ancient Egyptians worshipped a nameless deity who controlled animals. We know this because of artifacts such as gold pendants rendered in the shape of the animal lord. The Mesopotamians also seem to worship a mysterious man who had great control over lions. Whereas in Greece, there was a goddess called the Mistress of Animals, as is evident by carved reliefs dating back to around 625 BC. The one thing that's clear is that all throughout the Near East and Egypt and parts of the Mediterranean, the Animal Master was worshipped starting over 3,000 years ago. We don't know where the inspiration came from, if the Animal Master was based on a real hero, or if it was all a coincidence. Number 9. Heaven at the North Pole. According to ancient cultures around the world, the North Pole is a lot more than just ice and snow. Over half a dozen mythologies from across the globe have their sacred lands located at the North Pole. In Indian folklore, the North Pole is the location of Meru, which in Hindu mythology is the center of the universe and the home of the gods. Ancient legends speak of how a single day in Meru is equivalent to one human year. This was likely based on the idea that the North Pole has 6 months of daylight and 6 months of darkness. In the ancient Zoroastrian religion, the North Pole is suggested as the original home of the Aryans. The Aryans migrated south following the melting of the great ice shelves at the end of the Ice Age 12,000 years ago. This is something that may have really happened, with prehistoric people migrating south from the North Pole and spreading through Europe and Asia. As they went in search of new lands, they continued to tell tales of their homeland and the frozen world to the north. Chinese and Japanese mythologies describe the place of the gods being directly beneath the pole star, meaning the North Pole. The Norse spoke of a land of immortality at the North Pole. Even the Greeks envisioned a land called Hyperborea, where the sun shined for 24 hours a day. This was almost certainly in the Arctic Circle as well. And finally, the Celts also believed heaven was at the very north of the world, where winter lasted 6 months. Number 8. Sargon and Moses. The biblical story of Moses begins with an insecure pharaoh. The pharaoh is worried about the growing Hebrew population in Egypt, and so he commands that all Hebrew male infants be slaughtered. The mother of Moses hides her newborn son by sending him adrift down the Nile in a basket. By coincidence, he winds up being discovered by the daughter of the pharaoh and is taken under the protection of Egypt's ruler. Moses will later, with the help of God, lead the Jewish people out of Egypt and to the Promised Land. But the story is much older than the Bible. In fact, almost identical stories can be found in ancient Mesopotamia, Egypt, Rome, and India. One of the most jarringly similar is the story of Sargon. The story was told 4,000 years ago. The Akkadian emperor Sargon the Great was born by a mother who was a high priestess. But since he was an illegitimate child and under threat of being killed, his mother sent him adrift down a river in a basket. The boy was discovered by a gardener, raised in a humble family, and then helped by the goddess Ishtar to fight his way to become king. The stories aren't identical, but are close enough to see how the origin story of Moses may have been passed down from one culture to another. Number 7. The Statue of Liberty and Ishtar. The Statue of Liberty is the most recognized symbol of freedom and prosperity in the United States. It was built by the French sculptor Frédéric Bartholdi and given to the US as a gift in 1885. But did you know that the Statue of Liberty may have been based on an ancient goddess idolized by the Freemasons? The French sculptor and his Freemason friends referred to the woman as Libertà, but other cultures knew her by different names. The Romans adopted her as their own from the Babylonian goddess Ishtar, who we can see in ancient carvings looked almost identical to the Statue of Liberty. The Romans changed her name from Ishtar to Libertas around the 5th century BC. She was the goddess of freedom and liberty, but was also the patron goddess of prostitution. So that's definitely something to consider. Slaves in ancient Rome even worshipped Libertas in hopes that she would grant them their freedom. And now for number 6. But first, I want to give a big shout out to Carol Freeman and Angry Gamer. Thanks so much for watching and supporting Origins Explained. If you are new here, be sure to subscribe and join the family. Number 6. The God of Corn. In the ancient world, kingdoms often fought because they had drastically different beliefs. They had different gods, different rules to follow, and this led to conflict. But that wasn't the case for the Maya about 1400 years ago. In the year 687, a war broke out between the capitals of Palenque and Tonina. The two kingdoms battled for 24 years until both were overwhelmed and destroyed. Historians have always thought that the war lasted so long because these two societies, although part of the same empire, had a different system of beliefs. But new archaeological discoveries have shown that both of them fervently worshipped the same god of corn. Archaeologists with Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology and History found a stone disc at the ruins of Tonina. The disc is in almost perfect condition and shows the Maya corn god. It's almost identical to another archaeological discovery made at the rival city of Palenque. Researchers found a stucco sculpture showing the exact same god, proving that both cities shared the same beliefs. In this case, war had nothing to do with religious differences. The warring cities had similar cult practices, believed in the same things, but went to war anyway. Number 5. Cyanocephaly. Cultures across the globe used to believe in something called cyanocephaly. This was a mythical phenomenon referring to a creature with the head of a dog and the body of a human. People from India, Greece, China, and Egypt all had stories of human-dog hybrid creatures. Some experts believe the dog-headed monsters of ancient lore were the original werewolves, or at least the inspiration for the moon-fearing monsters that came in later medieval folktales. In ancient Egypt, Anubis was the god of the dead, depicted as a human with the head of a dog. In Greece, during the 5th century BC, the physician Ctesias wrote a detailed report about the dog-headed creatures that lived in India. The Greek traveler Megasthenes also wrote about meeting a mysterious group of people in India who had dog heads and communicated through barking. The more famous ancient historian Herodotus even reported a tribe of similar creatures living east of Libya, secluded in the desert. What's really strange is that more than 1,000 years after these ancient reports of mysterious dog-headed humanoids, images of saints with dog heads started to appear in Eastern Orthodox Church imagery. For example, Saint Christopher was frequently drawn as a half-human and half-dog creature from the 10th century until the 18th century. These images can still be found in some ancient Byzantine churches. In the New Testament, Saint Christopher has the head of a dog, barks, and eats human flesh. He is only turned into a human after he accepts Christ and gets baptized. The question that remains is, were there truly dog-headed humans in the ancient world? And if so, what in the world happened to them? Number 4. The twin Ziggurats. The mythological Tower of Babel may have a direct connection to Mexico's Great Pyramid of Cholula. Although the two structures are located in different parts of the globe, they have some shocking similarities. The Tower of Babel appears in the Bible's book of Genesis. The narrative says that the people of the world came together following a great cataclysm and united under one language. They migrated to modern-day Iraq, built a great city, and tried to build a tower that could touch the heavens. But the supreme deity saw this as an insult and smashed their tower and splintered the language that had united them. This caused the humans to scatter across the planet and speak different languages. The source of the myth was likely a ziggurat in ancient Mesopotamia. It could have been the ziggurat of Etemenanki in Babylon. History tells us the ziggurat was restored during the days of Nebuchadnezzar II in the 6th century BC, and then 300 years later, destroyed by Alexander the Great. Moving to Mexico, the Pyramid of Cholula is the largest pyramid on Earth by volume. Although it isn't an exact twin of the ziggurat of Etemenanki, their stories are extremely similar. In Aztec mythology, the pyramid was a site of pilgrimage. They believed it was constructed by an ancient race of giants called Kinametsin. The giants wished to build a tower so they could reach the sun. But the creator god was sent into a fit of anger by this, and he destroyed the tower and scattered the race of giants, causing them to go extinct. It's almost the exact same story as the Tower of Babel. Number 3. Anubis and Shalottul. The death rituals of the Egyptians and the Mayans were oddly similar, making some wonder how these two cultures came up with their ideas of the afterworld. The Egyptians believed that Anubis, their dog-headed god of death, would lead the soul of the deceased into the underworld where the dead would have to undertake a journey to reach Osiris. Osiris would then judge them either worthy or unworthy to enter paradise. If the person wasn't worthy, and their heart proved impure, they were thrown into the jaws of a monstrous crocodile god. The Maya believed in a similar process to reach eternal paradise. They even had their own god, kind of like Anubis. Shalottul was the Maya and Aztec god of deformities and death. Just like Anubis, Shalottul was depicted as a monstrosity with a dog head and a human body. And just like in Egyptian culture, the Maya believed that to reach paradise, a dead person needed to venture through the underworld and conquer a series of challenges. The Maya underworld was called Xibalba, but instead of being eaten by a monstrous crocodile, those who failed their test in the underworld were cast away into the void forever. Number 2. The bucket and cone. The bucket and cone are two things that can be seen frequently in ancient Mesopotamian artwork. According to historians and archaeologists, these things were held in the hands of winged genies about 3,000 years ago. During the days of the Neo-Assyrian Empire, between 911 and 605 BC, the bucket and cone are found in reliefs throughout Assyrian palaces. The winged creatures can be seen holding a bucket in their left hand and a pine cone in the right hand. But what is the significance here? That's something that has been extremely controversial. Mainstream archaeologists say the winged creatures are mythological genies from Assyrian lore. However, there are new explanatory texts to confirm this. Sure, they may have been connected to ancient rituals of purification, but there might be something even stranger going on here. The pine cone in particular is extremely suspicious. Not only is it seen in these Assyrian sculptures, but also all over the ancient world. As far back as 1224 BC, the Egyptians showed Osiris with a pine cone at the end of his staff. Depictions of ancient Hindu deities can also be seen holding a pine cone in their outstretched hand. The Mesoamerican god Chicomecoatl was even depicted holding out a pine cone with one hand while gripping an evergreen tree in the other. This is the biggest shock because Mesoamerican cultures had no contact with Europe and Asia. The point is that no one understands what the ancient people knew about pine cones that we don't understand or appreciate today. Why did all these ancient cultures have an obsession with pine cones? And for that matter, why was it always gods who held them in their outstretched hands? Number 1. The Giant and Osiris. There is something bizarre carved into the side of a hill in the English countryside. It's called the Cern Giant, and nobody really knows where it came from or how old it is. The carving is 180 feet tall, depicting a naked man holding a wooden club. He was created by carving shallow trenches in the ground and then filling those trenches with crushed chalk. It's a geoglyph, similar to those found in Peru in the Nazca Desert. Researchers believe the CERN giant was also once holding a severed head in his other hand, but that part of the geoglyph has since been destroyed. Some historians have linked the image to the ancient myth of Hercules. It's never been proven, but it is one of the many theories. Another is that the giant has a direct connection to the constellation of Osiris, the Egyptian god of life and fertility. It's not that the giant has a direct connection to Osiris, but rather to the origins of the god's mythology. In Egyptian myth, Osiris was connected to the constellation of Orion. It was his home after his resurrection. The constellation of Orion was depicted in ancient times as a warrior wielding a club, and the CERN giant happens to be pointing directly at the constellation of Orion in the sky, which certainly can't be a coincidence. At the end of the day, it's difficult to say what the connection is exactly and how deep the giant's ties are with Egypt. The CERN giant, created at least 2,000 years ago, is a pretty obvious depiction of Orion, which suggests an even further connection to Osiris from Egypt. Could the CERN giant have been made by enthusiasts of ancient Egyptian lore, or is it all just another coincidence? Thanks for watching! What do you think about all this? Let me know your theories in the comments below, and be sure to hit that subscribe button and come back soon. Bye!